you're preparing wrong. The stress you feel when the meeting hits the calendar, that's not the problem, that's the signal. The problem is most people don't have a system to focus the energy to be productive. I'm Michael Bruner. I help technical professionals translate expertise into meaning and impact. In this video, I share a 4-step system to turn stress into focused preparation to build presentations that actually land. Let's start with what most people do instead. You feel it the moment the calendar invite lands. An important presentation 3 weeks out, that's when you start to feel the stress build. Here's the thing. Stress is telling you something that's true. The stakes are real. You're not fully prepared yet. Your brain is doing exactly what it's designed to do. Flag the gap between where you are and where you need to be. This is the stress signal doing its job, pointing you to what you need to work on. In fact, research shows it's how you respond to stress that matters more than the stress itself. But here's what happens when stress has nowhere to go. Procrastination, inability to focus, stress eating, poor sleep. You distract yourself from how you're feeling with other things, which makes you even less productive and further ramps up your stress. That's what wrong presentation preparation looks like. What's even worse is if you run negative scenarios about how you failed in the past, or you can harness that energy and put it to work in a productive process that closes the gap, lowers the stress, and produces a superior outcome. The moment that stress hits, you can let it unconsciously run unbridled, or you can choose. You can choose to purposely prepare and build something useful with that energy. That sounds good, but how do you do that? What you need is a system, a presentation preparation system, one that you can use and rely on and come back to again and again for better results. To that end, over the years, I have refined and developed what I call the 4D presentation method. The steps are discover, decode, design, and then deliver. Notice how much work there is to do before presentation day. The first D is to discover what you have, the gaps that you need to fill, and the outcomes you desire. Second is to decode the organization and the audience, their priorities, how they operate, and who's in the room. Then you design your message, starting with the narrative and the approach that you're going to take to make your audience participants instead of passengers, and only then the visuals. Finally, deliver. Show up with engaging energy, be fully present, reading the room and steering it towards your desired outcomes. Work the process and you show up prepared, less stress, and able to show up as your best self. This isn't presentation theory or tips and tricks. It's a presentation system that you can rely on and one that will reward you. Here's how it works. The first D is discover. Without building slides, map out what you have, the gaps that you need to fill, and the outcomes that you desire. These 3 elements will be foundational in the presentation preparation process. First of all, what do you have? Start by taking an honest inventory. What do you know about this topic? What data do you have? Have you completed analysis? What material exists that's relevant? Most professionals underestimate what they already have. Cast the net wide before you narrow it. Now identify the gaps. What analysis still needs to be run? What data is missing? Who has context that you don't? What conversations need to happen to build a credible case? Discovery turns anxiety into a to-do list. And a to-do list is something that the brain can actually work on. Thirdly, what outcome do you desire? This is the most neglected dimension. What does success actually look like when you walk out of that room? What decision are you trying to drive? What resources or commitments do you need? What constraints are you working within? Time, budget, how much change the organization can handle right now. Most people skip this step entirely or consider it as an afterthought. The mistake is to build the presentation around what you know instead of what you need to accomplish. Discover forces the strategic question first. What am I trying to actually achieve here? Do I have all the pieces? Everything downstream is built to answer it. Your core content and your key ask are the instruction manual that helps guide everything that follows. Without them, you get distracted in the details and you can derail yourself or your audience from your true purpose. The second D is decode. Decode separates good communicators from great ones. Most technical presenters skip right from their work and their analysis to the slides. They never stop to ask what the information actually means for their audience, the people sitting in the room. Decoding has 3 dimensions. First, what matters? What guides the organization? What are the mission, the vision, the values, the strategy that's guiding the organization? What context and organizational priorities are driving decisions? If your message doesn't connect to what the organization is already pointing at, it can land as noise, no matter how technically sound it may be. Secondly, how does the organization operate? There are usually 2 layers, the official ones and the cultural ones. What are the formal and official documented processes and systems and governance frameworks? Who has the decision rights? And secondly, what is the actual culture and how things get done? The unwritten rules, the behavioral norms. What actually gets rewarded and what quietly gets buried? How are decisions really made here? And what is the appetite for risk and the political dynamics? When you decode this layer, you stop being surprised by what actually happens in the room during the presentation. Thirdly, who is in the room? This is where Decode gets more personal. What is their context? What is each person responsible for? What are their individual priorities? What are they measured on? What are they rewarded for? What are they champions of? What are they trying to protect? Do they already believe in this topic? And where might you be asking them to shift? Before you walk in the room, know what each person needs to hear from you, not just what you want to say. Without Decode, you're presenting your expertise into a vacuum. With it, you're speaking directly to the context that already exists in their head. The third D is design. Now it's time to craft the narrative based on the first 2 steps. Discover helped identify the pieces. Decode deciphers what's important to the organization. Design is where you put all that down and rebuild it from their point of view. It's the step that most technical professionals resist because it requires you to stop leading with your expertise and start leading with their problem. Here's the sequence that makes it work. Start with their tension and their words, not your framing, theirs. What are they actually worried about? What are they trying to solve? What are they under pressure to deliver? Write it out in the language they would use in a hallway conversation, not your technical jargon and vocabulary, not your technical problem statement. If you can't articulate the tension in their words, you haven't decoded it deeply enough. Go back. Next, write the opening and closing bookends. How do you introduce your tension in a way where they're leaning in? To them, it should feel like you're describing their world, not presenting your work. Then before you build the middle, write the end. How does the tension that you led with resolve? Writing the ending first focuses clarity on what the whole presentation is about. And importantly, it gives you the destination where you're going before you build the road. Thirdly, we design the middle. First, we sequence the narrative arc. Lay out your ideas as headlines. No content yet, just key takeaways, not topical one-word headlines. Now read the flow. The middle needs to escalate the tension. It's the story that brings it to life, the evidence that makes it undeniable, images that visually anchor it in their mind. The arc needs to flow steadily from their tension to your resolution. Get the architecture right at the headline stage before you spend hours building slides. A slide that doesn't belong is easy to remove as a headline, but it's brutal to cut it the night before after all that development work. Fourth, now build the slides. The architecture's locked. Every slide has a purpose. Now you can build with confidence. Keep the slide simple. The content of the slide should be proof of the headline. If a slide doesn't support the tension or the ask, it gets moved to the appendix. Design is hard because it requires you to set aside everything that you've built and ask a different question. Not what do I know, but what do they need to hear? The fourth D is deliver. By the time you reach deliver, something has shifted. The stress that hit 3 weeks ago has been harnessed to productively produce something real. A message that's been designed for a specific audience. Their tension, their context, their decision. You know what you built and for whom it was designed. That's a completely different feeling than the dread of a presentation. It's genuine anticipation to see what you built come alive for those whom you built it for. Before you can own the room, you need to own the material. That means knowing it well enough to navigate it freely, recall key points without a script, and expand or compress the material on the fly as the room demands. The fastest path there is spaced recall. Revisit your material across multiple short sessions over time, rather than trying to cram it in a long rehearsal the night before. That's how the brain builds retrieval pathways that hold under pressure. Next, drive your own energy and clarity. You've done the work, now own the room. Bring the energy, not performed enthusiasm, but the natural confidence that comes from someone who knows exactly what they've built and why it matters. Next, connect and stay present. Internalization is what frees you from your notes and your nerves, so you can be present in the room with eye contact, listening, responding to what's happening in the room rather than reciting what's rehearsed. Read the room in real time. Stay attuned to what's landing and what isn't. Notice where energy rises and resistance surfaces. The best presenters are constantly adjusting, not just executing. Lastly, steer towards action. Every great presentation ends with a decision or clear next steps. Know before you walk in the room exactly what you're asking for. Steer the room to make sure you arrive at that point, and ask for it with confidence as someone who's done the work. That's what the process produces, and it changes everything about how you present. The real cost of presentation anxiety isn't just a bad meeting. It's the weeks of wasted mental energy before it. There's a reason the best performers in any field are obsessed with systems, not goals. We don't rise to the level of our goals, we rise to the level of our systems. Every technically brilliant professional walking into a meeting has the same goal, a great outcome. What separates them is the systems to back it up. The 4D presentation method is a way I have found to funnel that nervous energy into productive preparation. Each stage has a concrete job for the brain to do, to work, not worry. You're not awaiting a presentation, you're architecting the presentation. Remember the steps. Discover what you have, the gaps, and the outcomes that you desire. Secondly, decode. Decode the organization, what's important, how they operate, and who's in the room. Design a message built around their tension, their narrative, their context. Deliver. Deliver with energy, presence, and direction for a positive impact. The key is to find a presentation preparation process that sets you up for success, not stress. The stress you feel means that you care. It means that your work matters. But stress without structure can sabotage your work and your wellness. A link to the 4D presentation method is available in the description below. If this was helpful, share it with a friend, hit the subscribe button, and watch the next video.